Welcome back. Today we're diving into something I know a lot of you have asked about, creating those awesome routines for learning English. And don't worry, we'll have tips for everyone, from beginners just starting out to those of you who are practically fluent.
Awesome.
We're dissecting a podcast episode, and it's called Best Daily Routines for Learning English in 2025. So pretty fitting, right?
Yeah, definitely.
We'll be focusing on how tech can make learning easier and, let's be honest, more fun. So are you ready to get into it?
Absolutely. Let's do it. This source is really cool because it doesn't just give you like random tips, It actually digs into the science behind why routines are so important when you're learning a language.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I think we all know, being consistent is important, but why? What's going on in our brains when we stick to a routine? Spill the beans.
Well, your brain thrives on structure. When you create a learning routine, you're not just, forming a habit. You're actually changing your neural pathways to make learning more efficient, almost like second nature.
So it's not just about being disciplined, it's about making it easier for our brains to actually absorb new information.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Exactly. And that's where reducing stress comes in, right? When you have a plan, you eliminate that whole "what should I do today" feeling, and that frees up so much mental energy for actually learning.
Oh, I feel that. I spend way too much time just figuring out what to do instead of actually doing it.
Exactly. No more wasted time. Just dive right in.
And I bet that also helps boost your confidence, right? Sticking to the plan, seeing yourself make progress, even if it's baby steps. It's gotta feel good.
Oh, absolutely. It's about building that self-belief, that feeling of, I can do this.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly motivating, for sure.
Okay, so we're on board with routines being the key. But what do they look like? The podcast breaks it down by time of day, starting with morning routines. When I first saw this list, I was like, wait, that's it.
Me too. It's so doable. And I like that the source doesn't try to force a one-size-fits-all approach because, let's face it, everyone's morning is different.
For sure. So they suggest something as simple as passive listening. Just pop on a podcast or an audio lesson while you're getting ready, brushing your teeth, making coffee. Learn while you're doing other stuff.
It's brilliant. It's like prepping your brain for the day without even really trying.
And they even suggest just 5-10 minutes of vocab review. You could use flashcards, write in a notebook, whatever works for you.
It doesn't sound like much, but those little bursts of review, especially when you do them every day, they really help you remember what you've learned.
Okay, this one I love because I'm all about journaling. And they recommend journaling, but not writing pages and pages. Just a few sentences in English about your day, anything that comes to mind. It's amazing how such a small thing can have a big impact.
Right. It's not just about improving your writing. Journaling actually helps you start thinking in English, which is like a superpower when you're trying to become fluent.
Wow, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, you're training your brain to process information in the language you're learning, which is huge.
Okay, this one might sound a little cheesy, but they talk about positive affirmations, like writing down or saying out loud, I'm becoming more fluent every day. And that can actually help.
It sounds silly, but there's actually research behind it. It's about changing your mindset, seeing yourself as a successful English speaker. That belief in yourself is powerful stuff.
I can see that. Okay, here's one I know people will love. Watching a short English video. It could be anything. A motivational speech, a news clip. 5 minutes is all it takes.
And the key here is to choose something that actually interests you, right?
Yep.
Make it fun, not a chore.
Exactly. The source stresses quality over quantity. No need to do all these things every morning. Pick one or two that work for you in your life.
Yeah, find what feels good and sustainable for you, because you're more likely to stick with it that way. Okay, so we've talked about mornings, but what about squeezing learning into a busy day? Let's move on to midday routines.
Yes, let's talk about those midday routines because I know a lot of us are juggling work, school, life, and finding time to study can feel impossible. So what does the podcast suggest for fitting learning into a jam-packed schedule?
Well, they really emphasize that midday is all about those short bursts of focused learning, like sneaking in little bits of English practice throughout the day.
Right.
And what better way to do that than with
Apps.
apps? Exactly. Like Duolingo, Memrise, Babbel. They're practically made for busy people. They're quick, fun, and they adapt to your level.
I love how personalized those apps are now, too. It's like having a custom-made curriculum right in your pocket.
It's pretty amazing how far they've come.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of things that fit into a busy schedule, good old passive listening makes another appearance. Podcasts or audiobooks while you're commuting or having lunch. Perfect.
I'm a huge fan of audiobooks. I listen to them all the time, especially while I'm cooking.
They're great for getting used to the natural rhythm and sounds of English.
Yes. Okay, this next one might sound a little strange, but the source actually recommends talking to yourself. In English, of course.
I know, it sounds weird, but think of it as mental practice. You can experiment with new words and grammar without worrying about making mistakes.
Yeah, it's like a judgment-free zone for your English.
Exactly. And it gets you comfortable just forming sentences and expressing yourself.
Love it. They also talk about shadowing, which is when you find a short audio or video clip, pause it after each sentence and repeat it out loud. It's great for pronunciation.
Yeah, shadowing is like having your own pronunciation coach right there with you.
And last but not least, for those midday breaks, they recommend, you guessed it, reading. Carry a book, an article, something you enjoy, even just 10 minutes can make a difference. What do you think is the best thing about reading?
Hmm. I'd say it's the vocabulary. You're exposed to so many new words and you see them used in context, which helps you actually understand them. Plus, it can be really relaxing. Okay, so we've covered mornings, midday, ready for some evening relaxation.
You bet. Bring on those evening routines. I want to know how to relax A&D learn at the same time. That sounds perfect.
Me too. And the source has some really great ideas for just that. The source really emphasizes that evening is all about like review and relaxation, which I'm all for. They suggest going over notes from the day, maybe looking at those flashcards again, or even using voice notes to kind of recap your day, all in English, of course.
I love that. Such a simple idea, but it makes so much sense. By reviewing what you've learned, you're really solidifying it in your memory.
And let's not forget the power of sleep.
Hmm.
Studies have shown that when you get a good night's sleep after learning something new, it helps your brain like cement those memories.
So basically, reviewing before bed sets us up for success while we're snoozing. Genius. Journaling makes another appearance in the evening routine too, right?
It does. But this time it's more about using those new words and phrases you've picked up.
Yeah.
Really finding your own voice in English.
I love that. It's about taking those building blocks, the vocab, the grammar, and actually creating something with them.
Exactly. And speaking of unwinding, what's more relaxing than curling up with a good book? They recommend reading something you enjoy for at least 15 minutes.
Reading is such a great way to learn because it doesn't feel like work. You're just enjoying a good story, and all that language is just seeping in.
Yeah. And it helps you wind down before bed, too. Okay, we can't forget about another favorite way to relax. Watching TV. The source suggests choosing shows or movies in English, with subtitles if you need them.
I mean, who doesn't love a good movie night? And with streaming, you can find content from all over the world with all those cool accents and dialects.
Right. It's amazing for improving your listening comprehension. And so many platforms now have those interactive subtitles where you can click on a word to get a definition or translation.
I love that. It's like having a built-in dictionary. Plus, there are those awesome language learning extensions that let you pause, rewind, save new words, even make flashcards right from the show you're watching.
It's crazy how much technology is changing the way we learn languages. Speaking of tech, before you hit the hay, the source have one last tip planned for tomorrow. Take a few minutes to jot down your English learning goals for the next day.
I'm a big believer in planning too. It helps me stay focused and motivated, and I'm way less likely to just give up when things get tough.
It's about being intentional with your learning, making it a priority. And finally, for ultimate relaxation, the source suggests listening to guided meditations or breathing exercises, but in English.
I love that idea, relaxing your mind and practicing your listening at the same time. Genius. All right, so we've covered morning, midday, evening routines, but in 2025, there's another game changer we have to talk about, technology.
Oh yeah, this is where things get really interesting. The source goes deep into all these cool tech tools that can really help you learn English faster and more effectively. Are you ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's explore how tech can take our learning to the next level. First up, we've got AI-powered apps. Those personalized learning plans are incredible. They adapt to your level, your pace, even your learning style, and the speech recognition is amazing. It's like having instant feedback on your pronunciation.
It's pretty mind-blowing how advanced they are. Apps like Duolingo and Babbel have been leading the way, but there are tons of new apps coming out all the time that are pushing the boundaries even further. It's like having a personal tutor in your pocket.
Okay, this next one is something I still can't get over, AI chatbots. We can actually have conversations with these bots, and they'll correct our grammar, suggest better phrasing. It's crazy.
Some of them are definitely better than others. Some can hold pretty natural conversations, while others are still a bit clunky. But even the more basic ones are great for just getting comfortable with speaking and making mistakes.
That's a great point. Taking away that fear of making mistakes is so important. It really holds people back.
Absolutely. And if you want to really step up your speaking practice, there are VR immersion apps. You can practice conversations in like realistic settings,
Yeah.
a coffee shop, a job interview. It's amazing.
I've heard so much about those. Is it really as game-changing as everyone says? Have you tried it?
I have, and yeah, it's pretty impressive. The technology has come so far, you really feel like you're in those situations. You can talk to virtual characters, practice your pronunciation. It's wild.
That's so cool. Okay, we can't forget about streaming. Shows and movies in English, with or without subtitles, still such a fun way to learn. Have you noticed any new features with streaming and language learning?
Oh, tons. A lot of platforms have those interactive subtitles now where you can click on a word to get a definition or translation right there on the screen. And there are those language learning extensions where you can pause, rewind, save new words, even make flashcards. It's incredible.
Speaking of tools, podcasts are still going strong. In 2025, there are literally podcasts for everything. Do you have any favorites?
Oh, so many. I love podcasts that focus on conversational English, the way people actually talk. And they're ones that break down grammar in a really fun way.
Yeah.
It just depends what you're looking for.
The best part is you can listen to them anywhere, on your commute, at the gym, while you're doing dishes. It's all about maximizing those little pockets of time.
Exactly. And even our smart devices are getting in on the action. We can practice speaking, get vocabulary reminders, even play English quizzes with Alexa or Google Assistant.
It's amazing how much tech is integrated into our lives now, and it's really changing how we learn languages. Social media, too, following English content creators on platforms like TikTok or Instagram, it's such a good way to get exposed to more casual, everyday English.
And it's so motivating. You can see how other people are using the language, pick up new slang and idioms. Plus, you can connect with other learners from all over the world.
Totally. And we can't forget about those AI translation apps. They've gotten so good. You can translate full sentences and even get explanations that take into account the context.
It's like having a personal translator on call 24/7. All this amazing tech is so exciting, but I think it's important to remember it's not like a magic solution.
Right. It can definitely help, but it's not going to do the work for you. You still have to put in the effort.
Absolutely. Technology can help you get there faster, but you still need to put in the time. Which brings us to another super important topic, motivation.
Yes, let's talk about motivation because honestly, no matter what you're trying to learn, staying motivated can be tough,
Right.
especially when you're not seeing results right away. So how do we overcome that? What does a podcast say?
Well, the source really breaks down some of the most common struggles. And one of the biggest ones is the whole I don't have enough time thing. We're all busy, right? So how do we actually make time for learning English?
Oh, tell me about it. I hear that all the time. It can feel really overwhelming, especially when you're just starting out.
Absolutely. The key is to start small, even just 10 or 15 minutes a day. It's about being consistent, not about spending hours and hours.
I love that. Small chunks are so much less intimidating. But how do you make sure those little bits of time are actually effective?
That's a great question. Focus on one thing at a time. So instead of trying to cram in vocab, grammar, and speaking practice all at once, just pick one and really give it your full attention. One day it's flashcards, the next day it's listening to a podcast.
Right, so it's all about quality over quantity, being intentional with those little pockets of time we all have.
Exactly. And as you start to see progress, even those small wins, it'll keep you motivated to keep going.
Okay, what about this one? Feeling stuck because you don't have anyone to practice speaking with. That's a tough one, especially if you're learning on your own.
It is. But the podcast has some good tips for this. We talked about shadowing, which is great for mimicking native speakers. Another thing you can do is record yourself speaking and then listen back.
I've tried that before, and it's amazing how much you can learn just by hearing yourself. Like, wow, I really need to work on that.
It's true. You become your own teacher. And then, of course, there's technology. Those AI chatbots and language exchange platforms are great for connecting with other learners or even native speakers. You can practice speaking and even make new friends while you're at it.
Okay, here's one I think we've all experienced. Forgetting what you've learned, you put in all this work, and then poof, it's gone. So frustrating. How do we actually make it stick?
The key is to review, review, review. Don't just learn something once and move on. Go back and look at your notes, those flashcards, even quiz yourself. It might seem boring, but it makes a huge difference in the long run. And the podcast also talks about something called spaced repetition.
Oh, yes, spaced repetition. I've heard of that, but I'm not really sure how it works.
It's actually pretty simple. Instead of reviewing everything at the same time, you space it out. So maybe you review new vocab the next day, then again a few days later, then a week later. By making your brain work harder to recall the information, it helps you remember it better.
That's so cool, like a little workout for your brain.
Exactly. And there are even apps that can help you with spaced repetition. Super helpful.
Okay, this is a big one for me. Feeling overwhelmed by all the resources out there. There's so much. Where do you even begin?
I know, it can be paralyzing.
Uh-huh.
The source's advice is to keep it simple. Choose one or two resources that you really like that fit your style and just focus on those. Don't try to do everything at once.
It's so tempting to try all the new things, the latest app, the coolest method. But you're right, it's better to really get good at using a few things than to be mediocre at a lot of things.
Exactly. Quality over quantity wins again.
Okay, last but not least, how do we deal with those moments when we feel discouraged, like when progress is slow and you just want to give up?
It's all about mindset. The source emphasizes the importance of celebrating those small wins. Did you understand a whole sentence in a movie without subtitles? Did you use a new grammar rule correctly? Those are all victories.
That's such a good point. It's easy to focus on how far we have to go instead of how far we've already come.
Right. And don't forget your why. Why are you learning English in the first place? Connect back to that purpose, and it'll help you push through those tough moments.
I love that. So we've covered a lot today, from the science behind routines to all those cool tech tools and how to stay motivated. What are your biggest takeaways?
For me, it's that there's no one right way to learn. It's all about finding what works for you, putting in the effort, and most importantly, enjoying the process.
Couldn't said it better myself. Start small, experiment, have fun. If you could only pick one thing from this episode to try tomorrow, what would it be? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.
And for those of you who are ready for a challenge, here's a question to think about. What tech tool from 2025 are you most excited to try for your English learning, and why? Happy learning, everyone!